in the world. And after so many successes, we believed it ourselves. We are the best soldiers in the world.
Alright, so
Then they invaded the Soviet
I'm
Union.
trying a new method here. I want to see if this video gets like instantly blocked or muted or something.
After 9 months,
This documentary is called The Wehrmacht. You can see it there.
I was the only one left of the company that
Watch
had
later.
marched into Russia. Out of 240 men.
Alright,
they were
check it
ashamed
out.
of their
Steak.
selves.
It's all fat. Look
How
at
did
that.
the wave of victories come to an end? What were the soldiers really thinking? Trent Park in England. Captured German officers have been held here in luxury since 1942. Believing they're unobserved, they speak freely. One topic dominates: the Russian campaign.
The Russians have destroyed our aura of invincibility. We have sacrificed the flower of our nation's youth, and our best divisions are dead and buried.
The English newspapers are right. They say we are suffering from delusions of grandeur.
They say, you are assholes. You have become megalomaniacs. You have gambled everything on one card. We've lost everything in Russia.
I did a bunch of weird shit to this steak.
It was all perfect, and then
Right.
it went downhill because
Like, I'm not a fucking cook, but I can, prepare stuff for my own consumption. So I pan-sear it for about like 20 minutes, right? Covered it in, covered one side, first seasoning salt, one side, garlic salt the other side, some garlic powder, habanero sauce one side, jalapeno sauce the other side, soy sauce and butter, low sodium soy sauce, just a little bit. So I don't know what's going on with the flavor here. I don't know what the fuck's wrong with me why I do that to my food, but it is what it is, and it's got to be tasty, right? That's the whole fucking point. I already had a salad, so this has to be my protein. So right now, 170, and I need to get down to 160. I have a bilateral ganglion cyst, my ankles, and my calf strain's coming back, which isn't good because that means if the stretching I'm doing for my mobility is causing it, that means my spasticity in my legs is so bad that I can't properly stretch to fix it, which is why I need a major surgery to have that repaired. And I might end up getting under 160. My problem is when I get that small, I just don't feel like powerful, so I just eat, right? Or I get so skinny that I think I can eat whatever I want. That's how I gained weight back before. Also, if you date fat women who have no concern for their bodies, that might rub off on you. No offense. So, yeah. My blood pressure's fine. Cholesterol is probably in the middle. But yeah, I wonder if I upload this to YouTube if it gets like instantly taken down, which would suck. It's a documentary that's on someone's channel. Should be able to show it to people, right? Copyright's a lot of bullshit. There's got to be ways to really free knowledge. You know, it's one of the things I don't agree with. It's one of the things I'm very commie on is open source knowledge. I'll tell you that right now. Every book, sure, you should pay for it if you want it, but it should also be free, right? We're talking just knowledge. I mean, what's the harm? Maybe fiction work you should pay for, but nonfiction, hell no. Every single one of those books should be free. But see, then you would. I think over time, the internet's going to have a really interesting effect on the world. Religion's going to collapse, or at least a lot of our traditional religions. You're going to see new religions arise in their place. Colleges are going to become less relevant. All that specialized training you can get for yourself. So really the dividing line is going to be between those who are self-starters and those who are not, right, in life. And I guess that kind of has always been the case, especially in our society, with our particular mores and values of competition and individualism. But yeah, if you look in 100 years, the internet's going to completely change professions, religion, all of it. A lot of the people that claim, for instance, this is just fucking tangents, man. I've seen this documentary already. He's talking about the invasion of Russia. I'm going to do a video on the invasion of Russia, battle by battle from memory. And I'm actually going to do, in the future, I'm going to do some history videos too. I have an entire library on that, and I need to use some of that material. But yeah, a lot of people that say that Muslims are going to take over Europe don't get it. A, they don't understand the demographics, right? So they don't understand that immigrant populations' birth rates decline. I also don't understand acculturation. So dominant culture is always going to have more power than the minority group in a society. And then they don't understand the effect of the internet in the Middle East fully, right? In the same way, a Christian can stumble across Christopher Hitchens or Richard Dawkins or Sam Harris or, let's go to the actual experts or actual figures like Epicurus and Nietzsche and all, and Rand, just throw some atheists out there, Schopenhauer, Hume, right? Same way a Christian can run across that, so can a Muslim, right? It's not that difficult to set up a VPN. It's really not. A lot of people had that training in the Middle East. A lot of people were quite smart in the Middle East. So, what I'm saying is, in 100 years, I'm sure we're going to have Salafists, somewhere, I'm sure, right? That's been a thing since the Qadirites. So, it is what it is. But it's not going to be some strong, thing that's just going to keep going and going. In the same way you see the reduction of faith in the United States, the reduction of faith in Europe, it's also going to happen in the Middle East, one way or the other. Because as strong as some of those authoritarian regimes are, like Iran and Saudi Arabia, a lot of them aren't that strong. A lot of them are relatively liberal, and that's relatively speaking, okay? They're not scions of democracy and tolerance. But they're going to have their own crisis as a cultural bloc, I guess.
Days before it began, WW2 came to see us. At that time, he believed in it himself. He said he had once been firmly against it, but now the orders had been issued. And he went wild with enthusiasm and almost believed what he said himself. Even though his views were once the exact opposite.
It was certainly normal to express doubts about the success of an operation and about its preparations in exchanges with colleagues. But we shouldn't attach too much importance to this source. As an anti-communist, Guderian believed in Operation Barbarossa. He wanted to wage this war, and he wanted to wage it successfully. And we know from other documents that in June 1941 he also believed that he could successfully execute the attack on Moscow. En route to Moscow, showing enthusiasm on demand. The soldiers called him Fast Times. Guderian had chosen the right motto for his tactics. That's just what we were. We could travel up to 120, 150 kilometers a day. Naturally.
All right. June 22nd, 1941. Kind of simple here. It's going to be difficult. So basically, what they're talking about right now, Operation Barbarossa. Okay. All you got to know, essentially, about it started to set the stage. Actually, you have the Nazi-Soviet Pact. They invade Poland. Right. So their border is roughly in this area, not 100%, but roughly. And I gotta move my face. There we go. So the Germans launched a surprise attack all along the front. Okay, so it's Germany, Hungary, Romania, Slovaks, because Slovakia was a German client state. Later on, you'll have Italian and Spanish divisions join. Okay, so the Axis powers attack, and included in that is Finland. Okay, so you have your Axis, von Lieb in the north, commands Army Group North. He advances Vilnius, Riga, then up to St. Petersburg, which is then called Leningrad. Army Group Center, Fedor von Bock, advances on access to Moscow, and I believe it's von Rundstedt in the south, the Army Group South, and they advance into the Ukraine, eventually to the Rostov-on-Don. Okay, so there's that's the axis of advance. So you have, and also you have what's not often not talked about, an attempt to take Murmansk, which is a failure because the terrain's too horrible. So, and then the Finns are coming from the north to reclaim the land that they lost against the Russians in the famous Winter War. All right. So there are several things to note. 3.5 million men, thousands of tanks. All right. The Russians have thousands of tanks, but they're very disorganized. The Russians are deployed in a weird manner because they have chosen to occupy the Baltic states. This is what some of the tension between the two powers was over. And so they've abandoned what was the Stalin line, which was somewhere back here along the Russian border. And they're forward deployed. Their air force is forward deployed. Their armies are forward deployed, and the Germans hit them with envelopment tactics. Basically, a very souped up version of the Blitzkrieg. And so they're talking in the documentary about that. So battles go something like this. Okay, you have, it's going to be really hard to actually do this because I don't know White Russian. But essentially in the north, it's fairly straightforward. The Germans get right up to Leningrad, and then they just can't take the city. Or choose not to. Right? Because they don't want to get in city fighting, which is smart. You know? There's a major battle to take Minsk. Right? And then you have your Smolensk encirclement. Okay? In the south, they're trying to advance. It turns out the Russians have deployed the majority of their troops in the south, okay? Because it's tank country, right? And they figure if any war happens, it's going to be towards the Caucasus. to take their oil and towards the Ukraine to seize their grain. This is the breadbasket of Russia. Okay, so Hitler pauses the offensive. He never wants to take Moscow, and he's actually somewhat correct in wanting to take the Ukraine because of its economic importance. If you take it, you can starve the Russians. If you get to the oil fields, you can have enough oil to continue the war. Now, he stops the offensive. And then what's probably one of the biggest battles in history around Kiev happens, because you have Army Group Center and Army Group South encircling the majority of the Russians there. Right. Then you have your advance to Rostov-on-Don by Army Group South. After Smolensk, you have your last major battle before Moscow around Vyazma. Okay. So that's another major encirclement where hundreds of thousands of Russians are killed. But of course, this entire time, the Germans are suffering attrition. And now, because of the early onset of winter, they are bogging down. And the Rasputina, I believe is how you pronounce it. I don't speak Russian. The mud season. So then, they launch Operation Typhoon. And you have Hoth and Gunderian trying to encircle Moscow. Tula, Kaluga, Kalin. Right, they get pretty close. They get to the Moscow-Volga Canal, at least. And of course, at this point, Operation Barbarossa is basically a failure. They can't get there. Their troops are exhausted. They've suffered hundreds of thousands of casualties. They're overextended on their other two fronts as well. They're fighting viciously in Rostov. And yeah, they basically have to stop. Hitler refuses the retreat. You have Zhukov launch his counteroffensive, and they end up getting pushed back to a rough area. Let me zoom in here if I can see Rezev on here. They get pushed back in the battles of 41-42 in that winter, where they have a salient that punches into Rezev, right? They're still very close to Moscow. And that area will be the site of 4 or 5 major Soviet offensives that are complete failures for the Soviets. Well, I mean, that's Operation Barbarossa in a nutshell. So, probably made some mistakes in there, but, it's important to note that when the Germans go into Ukraine, they do not take Sevastopol. Okay? They leave it alone. They can't take it. It's too fortified. And that comes into play, in the next year. But, yeah, I mean, the major battles of encirclement, right? The Germans use, I'll just demonstrate it. Okay, so basically, like, the idea here is have a line, right? And you have your spearheads will find a weak point. Schwerpunkt, I believe. Again, it's terrible fucking German. Okay, I know. But they will create a breach in the line. right? And then essentially continue attacking and end up enveloping the Russians, right? So you have these huge pockets. These panzer divisions are basically they're cut loose, right? They're allowed to do whatever they want in this scenario, and they have artillery superiority, air superiority. They don't have infantry superiority. The Russians fight to the death quite frequently. And actually, your penance for losing these battles is for Stalin to fly in an NKVD squad and just pretty much take care of you, or you kill yourself, right? We shot a lot of the generals, um, so yeah, I'm no scholar. I'm just a person who's read a few books on this stuff. So yeah, I mean, they basically use envelopment tactics against the Russians, um, spearheaded by armor, which is why they're able to cover so much ground, right? Some of the longest advances, biggest encirclement battles in history, actually, for sure, happened on the Eastern Front. The difference, of course, is the Germans have this focus on operational art, which is tactically driven. Okay, so the German military as a whole, going back to Frederick the Great and his oblique order and his ability to drill his soldiers and face, death in battle with discipline. German focus has always been on operational art. The Russians at the time, under I.G. Issersohn and some other theorists, Timoshenko, are developing the idea of deep battle, which is like blitzkrieg but on a strategic level. Okay, the Germans don't really have a unified strategy for the war itself or for the Eastern Front, hence the three axes that are spread over, thousands of miles. The Soviet difference is that the local breakthroughs are often done by infantry, which is why you see a lot of human wave attacks by the Russians, a lot of very tactically unsophisticated waste of their soldiers' lives. And they'll basically waste their men's lives in an attempt to weaken the Germans, and then they will punch through with armor, and they end up having way more armor than the Germans. So as the war ages, it gets very dicey for the Germans. This is why they lose. But yeah, so that's Operation Barbarossa in a nutshell, and I finished my steak.